15 Things You Never Knew About Marlon Brando. From wanting to play Superman's father as a green bagel to keeping his best friend's ashes for 30 years, Marlon Brando was as bizarre off-screen as he was brilliant on it. The legendary actor's life was filled with pranks that would make Jack Nicholson jealous, medical procedures that shocked doctors, and personal habits so strange they became Hollywood legend. Here are 15 things you never knew about Marlon Brando. Fact 1. He wanted Superman's father to be a bagel. When Marlon Brando was cast as Jor-El, Superman's father, in the 1978 Superman movie, he had one of the strangest creative suggestions in Hollywood history. During pre-production meetings, Brando seriously proposed that his character should not appear as a human at all, but instead as a green bagel that would speak with his distinctive voice. The legendary actor believed that since Jor-El was an alien from another planet, there was no logical reason he should look human, and he thought a talking bagel would be more scientifically accurate for an extraterrestrial being. The producers and director Richard Donner were absolutely horrified by this suggestion. They had already committed to paying Brando an enormous salary of $3.7 million, plus a percentage of the film's profits for just 12 days of work, making him one of the highest-paid actors in the project. The idea of having one of cinema's most respected actors appear as a piece of bread was terrifying to studio executives who were already nervous about whether audiences would take a superhero movie seriously. Brando's bagel idea wasn't just a throwaway comment during casual conversation. He presented it as a genuine creative proposal during formal script discussions, explaining his reasoning about alien appearance and arguing that it would make the film more unique and scientifically logical. The actor was known for his method-acting approach and unconventional ideas, but this suggestion pushed even his most patient collaborators to their limits. Eventually, the filmmakers managed to convince Brando to appear in his normal human form, though they did compromise by having Jor-El wear the now iconic white crystalline robes that made him look somewhat otherworldly. The producers later admitted they spent sleepless nights imagining how they would explain to Warner Brothers executives that their expensive Superman movie featured Marlon Brando voicing a talking green bagel in the opening scenes. Fact 2. His checks went uncashed for decades. Marlon Brando's autograph became so incredibly valuable during his career that many people who received personal checks from him never bothered to cash them at the bank. Instead, they kept the checks as collector's items, because his signature was literally worth more money than whatever amount he had written on the check itself. This created an unusual situation where Brando's bank account would show outstanding checks for months or even years, with money that should have been withdrawn still sitting untouched in his accounts. The phenomenon started in the 1960s when Brando was at the height of his fame, and autograph collectors began paying hundreds or even thousands of dollars for anything bearing his genuine signature. Restaurant owners, shopkeepers, and service providers who received checks from Brando quickly realized they could sell these signed pieces of paper to collectors for far more than the original check amount. A $20 check for groceries might be worth $200 to an autograph dealer, making it financially foolish to deposit the check normally. Brando's accountants and business managers had to deal with this strange bookkeeping problem regularly. They would contact people who hadn't cashed checks to find out if there were issues with payment, only to discover that the recipients were deliberately holding onto them as valuable memorabilia. Some checks remained uncashed for so long that they technically expired, though many recipients didn't care since they had no intention of depositing them anyway. This situation became so common that people in Brando's social circle would sometimes joke about paying him with personal checks, knowing that he might never cash them either. The actor reportedly found the whole situation amusing, though it did create genuine accounting headaches for his financial team, who had to track which outstanding payments were actually collectible autographs rather than forgotten bills. Fact 3. He kept his best friend's ashes. When Marlon Brando's closest friend Wally Cox died unexpectedly in 1973, Brando made a promise to Cox's widow that he would scatter his ashes in a meaningful place, but instead he kept them in his home for the next 30 years, and regularly had conversations with them. Cox had been Brando's roommate and dearest companion, since their early struggling actor days in New York. And the two men had maintained an unusually close friendship that lasted throughout their entire careers in Hollywood. Wally Cox was a gentle, soft-spoken comedian and actor who was best known for playing the mild-mannered teacher Mr. Peepers on television, which made him seem like an unlikely friend for the intense and rebellious Brando. However, the two men had connected deeply during their youth, when they were both trying to make it as actors, sharing a small apartment and supporting each other through rejection and financial hardship. Their friendship was so strong that even after both became successful, they continued to speak almost daily and spend holidays together. After Cox's sudden death from a heart attack, his widow entrusted Brando with her husband's cremated remains, asking him to find an appropriate place to release them. Instead of following through on this request, Brando brought the ashes back to his house and placed them in a prominent location where he could see them regularly. Family members and close friends reported that Brando would often talk to the ashes as if Cox were still alive, sharing daily events, asking for advice, and continuing the conversations they had maintained for decades. Brando kept Cox's ashes until his own death in 2004, never finding what he considered the perfect place to scatter them, and apparently finding comfort in maintaining this unusual connection with his departed friend. Fact 4. He used a ham radio with fake identities. Marlon Brando was a licensed amateur ham radio operator who spent countless hours chatting with strangers around the world, but instead of using his real name, he created elaborate fake identities and spoke in different accents to disguise his famous voice. His favorite fake names included Mike, Martin Bumby, and Jim Ferguson, and he would often spend entire evenings having long conversations with people who had no idea they were talking to one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Ham radio was a popular hobby during the 1950s and 60s that allowed people to communicate with others across great distances using radio equipment, and Brando became genuinely fascinated with the technology and the community of radio enthusiasts. He obtained his official amateur radio license and set up a sophisticated radio station in his home, complete with powerful transmitters and antennas that could reach operators on different continents. The hobby appealed to him because it offered a way to connect with regular people without the complications that came with his celebrity status. When Brando got on the radio waves, he would completely transform his personality and voice, sometimes pretending to be a farmer from the Midwest with a heavy accent, or a businessman from the East Coast with a completely different speaking style. He was so skilled at these vocal transformations that even experienced radio operators who talked with him regularly never suspected his true identity. Some of his radio friends maintained these friendships for years, having regular conversations with what they believed were ordinary people living normal lives. Brando reportedly found these radio conversations deeply satisfying because they allowed him to experience genuine human connection without the barrier of fame, and he could explore different aspects of his personality through these invented characters while practicing his natural talent for accents and voice work. Fact 5. He read lines off a baby's diaper. During the filming of Superman, Marlon Brando had his dialogue written directly on the diaper of the infant actor who played baby Superman because he absolutely refused to memorize his lines and needed to read them from somewhere during the scene. This bizarre solution came about when Brando was shooting a crucial scene where Jor-El holds his infant son before sending him to Earth, and the actor needed to deliver an emotional speech while looking down at the baby in his arms. Brando had developed a reputation throughout his later career for refusing to learn his lines ahead of time, preferring instead to read them from cue cards, teleprompters, or any other available surface during filming. He believed that memorizing dialogue made his performances feel too rehearsed and artificial, and he insisted that reading lines fresh helped him maintain a more natural and spontaneous acting style. This approach drove directors and fellow actors to distraction, but studios continued to accommodate his demands because of his star power and talent. For the Superman scenes involving the baby, the film crew faced a unique challenge since Brando needed to look directly at the infant while delivering his lines, making traditional cue cards or teleprompters impossible to use effectively. The creative solution involved having a crew member carefully write Brando's dialogue in large, clear letters across the front of the baby's diaper, positioning the text so that Brando could read it naturally while appearing to gaze lovingly at his fictional son. The infant actor's parents were reportedly amused by this unusual use of their child's costume, and the crew had to prepare multiple diapers with the same dialogue written on them, in case the baby needed changing between takes. Director Richard Donner later described this as one of the most surreal moments in his filmmaking career, watching one of cinema's greatest actors deliver dramatic speeches while reading off a baby's diaper. Fact 6. He tried circumcision without anesthesia at 60. When Marlon Brando was 60 years old, he became convinced that his years of meditation practice had given him superhuman pain tolerance, and he decided to prove this belief by undergoing circumcision without any anesthesia or painkillers. Brando had been deeply involved in various spiritual and philosophical practices for decades, including meditation techniques that he believed could help people transcend physical discomfort through mental discipline and focused concentration. During the 1980s, Brando had become fascinated with the idea that the human mind could overcome physical limitations through proper training and spiritual development. He spent considerable time studying different meditation traditions and pain management techniques, convinced that he had developed abilities that went far beyond what most people could achieve. This confidence in his mental powers led him to seek out increasingly extreme ways to test his supposed immunity to pain. When Brando approached doctors about performing this unusual procedure without standard medical pain relief, most physicians refused to consider such a request, explaining that it would be both medically unnecessary and potentially dangerous. The adult circumcision procedure itself was something Brando had decided he wanted for personal reasons, but his insistence on avoiding anesthesia made it nearly impossible to find a medical professional willing to accommodate his demands. Eventually, Brando did find a doctor who agreed to attempt the procedure according to his specifications, though the exact details of how this unusual medical appointment proceeded have remained private. Friends and family members who knew about Brando's plan reportedly tried to convince him that proving his pain tolerance in this particular way was unnecessary and risky, but the actor remained determined to test what he believed were his extraordinary mental abilities through this extreme physical challenge. Fact 7. He broke his famous nose in a boxing match. Marlon Brando's distinctive broken nose, which became one of his most recognizable features and contributed to his rugged screen presence, was actually the result of an impromptu boxing match that took place backstage during his legendary run in a streetcar named Desire on Broadway. The injury happened during the late 1940s when Brando was performing the role of Stanley Kowalski, the part that would make him a star and establish his reputation as one of America's most talented young actors. A Streetcar Named Desire was a groundbreaking play written by Tennessee Williams that featured intense, emotionally charged performances and dealt with themes of desire, violence, and mental breakdown. Brando's portrayal of the brutal yet charismatic Stanley Kowalski was revolutionary for its raw sexuality and naturalistic acting style, completely different from the more formal theatrical performances that audiences were used to seeing at the time. Between performances or during rehearsal breaks, Brando and some of the other actors would sometimes engage in casual boxing matches backstage as a way to blow off steam and stay in shape. These weren't serious fights, but rather friendly sparring sessions that helped the cast bond and release the tension that built up from performing such emotionally demanding material night after night. However, during one of these informal boxing sessions, Brando took a particularly hard punch to the face that broke his nose. Rather than having the injury surgically corrected, Brando decided to leave his nose as it was, and the slightly crooked, broken appearance became part of his iconic look. The injury gave his face a more weathered and masculine quality that perfectly suited the tough, rebellious characters he would go on to play in films, and many people believe this accidental change to his appearance actually helped his career by making him look more authentically rugged and street-smart. Fact 8. He gave someone a human scalp necklace. British actress Patricia Quinn, who was best known for her role as Magenta in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, claimed that Marlon Brando once gave her a necklace made from real human scalp as what he apparently considered a romantic gesture during their brief relationship in the 1970s. Quinn, who had a reputation for being attracted to unconventional and rebellious men, met Brando during the height of his fame when he was known for his unpredictable behavior and fascination with various cultures and spiritual practices. According to Quinn's account of their relationship, Brando had developed an interest in Native American traditions and artifacts during this period of his life, and he had begun collecting various items that he believed had spiritual or cultural significance. This interest was part of his broader exploration of different belief systems and his ongoing activism for Native American rights, which would later lead to his famous refusal to accept his Academy Award for The Godfather in 1973. Quinn described the necklace as being made from what Brando claimed was an authentic piece of human scalp, though the exact origin or age of this unusual item was never clear from her description of the gift. She said that Brando presented it to her with great ceremony, explaining that he believed it carried powerful spiritual energy and that giving it to her was meant to show the depth of his feelings and his desire to share something truly meaningful with her. The actress kept the bizarre gift for some time, though she later admitted that wearing a necklace made from human remains felt increasingly uncomfortable, regardless of whatever cultural or spiritual significance Brando had attributed to it. Quinn's story about this unusual romantic gesture became part of the growing collection of strange anecdotes about Brando's unconventional approach to relationships and his tendency to give gifts that reflected his current obsessions rather than conventional tokens of affection. Fact 9. He stole a bell tower clapper and organized the search. During his time at Shattuck Military Academy in Minnesota, teenage Marlon Brando managed to steal the school's heavy 150-pound bell clapper from the campus bell tower, bury it in a secret location, and then brilliantly volunteered to organize the official search committee to find the missing piece and identify the vandal responsible for the theft. This elaborate prank demonstrated the cunning and theatrical skills that would later make him famous, as well as his natural ability to manipulate situations and fool authority figures. Shattuck Military Academy was a strict boarding school where Brando had been sent by his parents in hopes that military discipline would help control his rebellious behavior and improve his academic performance. The school operated on a rigid schedule that was regulated by the campus bell, which rang throughout the day to signal class changes, meals, study periods, and lights out, making the bell tower an essential part of daily life for all students and faculty members. The bell clapper theft required considerable planning and physical effort, since the metal piece weighed 150 pounds and had to be carefully removed from the tower without being detected by school authorities or other students. Brando somehow managed to accomplish this difficult task and then found a secure hiding place where he buried the clapper, ensuring that it would not be accidentally discovered during routine maintenance or groundskeeping activities. When school officials realized that their bell was no longer functioning and began investigating the mysterious disappearance of the clapper, Brando stepped forward as a concerned student eager to help solve the crime. He volunteered to lead the search efforts and coordinate with other students to track down the culprit, all while knowing exactly where the missing piece was hidden and who was responsible for taking it in the first place. Fact 10. His dog answered interview requests. Marlon Brando trained his massive mastiff named Dr. Tim to answer media interview requests by saying Marlon Brando is unavailable in response to journalists' questions, and he even arranged for the dog to make an actual appearance on Larry King Live as his official representative. This bizarre publicity stunt was part of Brando's ongoing effort to avoid dealing with reporters and media interviews, while simultaneously mocking the entire celebrity interview process that he found increasingly tiresome, meaningless. By the later years of his career, Brando had grown extremely frustrated with the constant demands from journalists, talk show hosts, and entertainment reporters who wanted him to discuss his personal life, his acting methods, and his opinions on various topics. He believed that most celebrity interviews were shallow and repetitive, focusing more on gossip and sensationalism than on any meaningful discussion of his work or important social issues that he cared about. Dr. Tim was an enormous mastiff that Brando had trained to perform various tricks and respond to specific verbal cues, and the actor spent considerable time teaching the dog to bark or make sounds that could be interpreted as words or phrases. When journalists would call or visit Brando's home seeking interviews, he would sometimes bring out Dr. Tim and claim that the dog was speaking on his behalf, delivering the standard message that Brando himself was not available for comment. The appearance on Larry King Live represented the peak of this unusual publicity strategy, with Brando actually arranging for his dog to be brought into the television studio as a guest. Larry King, who was known for his ability to handle unusual situations with professional calm, conducted a brief segment where he attempted to interview Dr. Tim as if the dog were a legitimate celebrity spokesperson, while Brando remained absent from the show entirely, letting his pet serve as his official media representative. Fact 11. He had a peeing contest over a movie role. Marlon Brando and fellow actor Anthony Quinn engaged in a bizarre competition to see who could urinate the farthest distance across the Rio Grande River, with the winner supposedly earning the right to play the lead role of revolutionary leader Emiliano Zapata in the upcoming film Viva Zapata. This unusual contest took place during the early 1950s, when both actors were being considered for the starring role in what would become an important biographical drama about the Mexican revolutionary hero. Viva Zapata was a major Hollywood production directed by Elia Kazan and written by John Steinbeck, focusing on the life and death of Emiliano Zapata, who had led peasant uprisings against the Mexican government in the early 1900s. The role was considered extremely desirable because it offered the chance to play a complex historical figure in a serious dramatic film, and both Brando and Quinn were eager to land the part that could advance their careers significantly. According to Hollywood legend, the two actors found themselves at the Rio Grande River, which forms part of the border between the United States and Mexico, when they decided to settle their rivalry over the Zapata role through this unconventional method. Both men were known for their competitive personalities and their willingness to engage in unusual behavior, so the idea of resolving a professional dispute through a crude physical contest apparently seemed reasonable to them at the time. The story goes that both actors participated in this undignified competition with complete seriousness, treating it as if it were a legitimate way to determine who deserved the prestigious role. While the exact outcome of this strange contest has never been definitively documented, Marlon Brando ultimately did win the lead role in Viva Zapata and delivered what many consider one of his finest early performances, while Anthony Quinn was cast in a supporting role as Zapata's brother Eufemio, a part that earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Fact 12. He made Godfather crew carry weights as a prank. During the filming of The Godfather, Marlon Brando secretly filled his stretcher with heavy weights before shooting the scene where Don Vito Corleone is carried to his bedroom after suffering a heart attack, turning what should have been a simple task for the crew members into an unexpectedly difficult physical challenge. This elaborate prank was typical of Brando's mischievous behavior on film sets, where he was known for playing practical jokes on cast and crew members to keep the atmosphere light and break up the tension of filming intense dramatic scenes. The stretcher scene occurs after Don Corleone collapses in his garden while playing with his grandson, and several family members and household staff must carry the unconscious crime boss into the house and up to his bedroom. The scene was meant to show the gravity of the Don's condition and the concern of his family, requiring the actors to handle the stretcher with appropriate care and urgency, while maintaining their characters' emotional responses to the medical emergency. Before filming began, Brando quietly arranged for heavy weights to be hidden underneath his body on the stretcher, adding a significant amount of extra weight that the unsuspecting crew members would have to carry during the scene. The actors and crew members who were supposed to lift and transport the stretcher had no idea about Brando's secret addition, so when they went to pick him up for the first take, they were shocked by how much heavier he seemed than expected. The prank caused immediate confusion and strain as the carriers struggled with the unexpected weight, trying to maintain their professional composure while dealing with what felt like an impossibly heavy load. Some crew members reportedly thought that Brando had somehow gained a tremendous amount of weight between rehearsals and filming, while others suspected mechanical problems with the stretcher itself, not realizing that their celebrated co-star had deliberately sabotaged the scene as an elaborate practical joke. Fact 13. He spent party money on hitchhiking. When young Marlon Brando was given bus fare money to travel to his audition for A Streetcar Named Desire, he decided to spend the transportation funds on party supplies instead, and hitchhiked his way to what would become the most important audition of his career. This reckless decision perfectly captured Brando's spontaneous and unconventional approach to life, even when it came to crucial professional opportunities that could determine his entire future in the entertainment industry. At the time of this audition, in the late 1940s, Brando was still a struggling young actor in New York who was living paycheck to paycheck and taking whatever small roles he could find in theater productions. The opportunity to audition for Tennessee Williams' new play represented a potentially life-changing chance, since A Streetcar Named Desire was already generating significant buzz in theatrical circles as an important and groundbreaking work that could launch the careers of its cast members. Fact 14. He once mooned everyone on The Godfather set. Despite understanding the importance of this audition, Brando made the impulsive decision to use his travel money for what he considered more immediate entertainment, purchasing alcohol and party supplies for a social gathering with friends. This choice meant that he would have to find an alternative way to reach the audition location, so he decided to hitchhike, relying on the kindness of strangers and his own charm to get rides from passing motorists. The hitchhiking journey to his audition became part of Brando's personal legend, demonstrating his willingness to take risks and his confidence that things would somehow work out in his favor. He managed to arrive at the audition on time, despite his unconventional travel method, and his performance as Stanley Kowalski was so powerful and memorable that he immediately landed the role that would make him a star and establish him as one of America's most important actors. Despite The Godfather's serious tone and dramatic subject matter, Marlon Brando and several other cast members regularly engaged in juvenile mooning pranks throughout the filming process, with Brando himself participating in these crude displays by dropping his pants and exposing his bare backside to shocked crew members and fellow actors. These inappropriate antics created a bizarre contrast between the film's dignified mafia family story and the childish behavior happening behind the cameras during production breaks. The Godfather was one of the most prestigious and expensive film productions of the early 1970s, dealing with themes of family loyalty, violence, and power within organized crime families. Director Francis Ford Coppola was working to create a serious cinematic masterpiece that would elevate the gangster genre beyond simple action movies, focusing instead on complex character development and realistic portrayals of Italian-American family dynamics and criminal enterprises. However, the long shooting days and intense emotional demands of the dramatic scenes apparently led some cast members to seek relief through immature practical jokes and crude humor. The mooning trend reportedly started with younger actors in the cast and gradually spread to include even the most respected veteran performers, creating an ongoing series of surprise exposures that became a running gag throughout the months of filming. Brando, who was already known for his playful and unpredictable behavior on movie sets, enthusiastically joined in these pranks despite being one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood and playing the film's most important and dignified character. His participation in the mooning incident surprised many crew members who expected more professional behavior from someone of his stature, but it also helped create a relaxed atmosphere that allowed the cast to bond and maintain their energy during the challenging production schedule that stretched over many months of filming. Fact 15. He lied about his birthplace to playbill. Throughout his early theater career, Marlon Brando repeatedly gave false information about his birthplace to theater programs and promotional materials, claiming at various times that he was born in exotic locations like Calcutta, Bangkok, Thailand, and Mukden, China. These creative lies about his origins were part of Brando's ongoing effort to create a more mysterious and interesting public persona that would set him apart from other actors and make him seem more worldly and sophisticated to audiences and critics. During the 1940s and early 1950s, theater programs called playbills would include biographical information about cast members to help audiences learn more about the performers they were watching on stage. These short biographical sketches typically included basic facts like where actors were born, where they studied, and what previous roles they had played, providing theatergoers with background information that might enhance their appreciation of the performance. Brando found the idea of listing his actual birthplace of Omaha, Nebraska, to be boring and unremarkable, so he began inventing more exotic and interesting locations for his official biographies. He would change his supposed birthplace from production to production, sometimes claiming to have been born in India, other times in Southeast Asia, and occasionally in China, creating an ever-changing mythology about his background that made him seem like a man of international mystery. The exotic locations Brando chose were not random, but were carefully selected to suggest adventure, cultural sophistication, and worldly experience that might make audiences more intrigued by his performances. Places like Calcutta and Bangkok carried associations with colonial adventure stories and Eastern mysticism that were popular in Western culture at the time, while Mukden was an ancient Chinese city that sounded mysterious and far removed from typical American experience, making Brando's background seem far more interesting than the reality of his Midwestern upbringing.